Have you ever heard of the Camino de Santiago? I had not heard about this until a friend of mine, Andrew, went on a hike or a walk. I'm not really sure exactly where it would classify, but it's like almost 500 miles. And it's sort of like historically a religious pilgrimage. I don't know that he's necessarily that religious, but the walk seems pretty incredible, and his story is pretty interesting too. From learning how to sort of deal with his inner thoughts to bed bugs and all that. So let's take a listen to this episode where I go through it all with Andrew, and let's see what we can learn from it. Let's get after it.
Welcome to the Warrior Mindset Podcast. We're your guide as you make your way through life, getting better 1% every day. We believe that life is lived and true victory won through adversity. Nothing easy is ever worth it. We believe in the warrior ethos and support those that choose to walk that path.
Andrew, my friend, how's it going?
It's going great, man.
We
Good
were
to
just
see you.
talking. Yeah, how long's it been? It's been a while, like, gosh, 2021 or something like that.
It's
We got in a workout in the middle of a hurricane. And you know, I got in trouble for that because I let you guys in and we told everyone else to stay home that day. And I let you guys in. You were up here because it was flooding in Charleston.
Yep.
And I let you guys in and I did something stupid and I took a picture.
Yeah.
And I
I've
put it
still
on
got
Instagram.
that picture on my phone, I think.
And everybody was like, why can't I come to the gym? I'm like, I made a mistake. That was my first lesson.
It's like you, me, Moultrie, Heather, and then some one of your gym members or somebody who I'm always like,
that was fun, man.
Yeah, that was
Fun.
super cool. It's a
You
good
still
workout.
working out?
So I moved to Detroit in 2021.
Okay.
In June of 2021, met a girl, followed her up here to Detroit with her permission.
Important. It's important to point that out.
She was on board with the plan. And when I got up here, I'd been doing CrossFit for a few years and was just getting a little tired of it, was just looking for something new. And so I'd always been kind of curious about rock climbing. I'd done a little bit here and there with a couple of friends, and there were a couple of gyms here in Detroit. And I'd been really craving doing some backpacking and camping and stuff. And so I decided to give climbing a try and just got hooked. And so I've been rock climbing as my like primary force of
that's awesome
form of working out for like the last that was 2022 or 2021, so coming up on 3 years now.
Wow. What kind of climbing are you doing?
A little bit of a mix of everything.
Okay.
So the gym that I climb at, which has become also like where all of my friends are, because all of my friends in Detroit are people I met at the climbing gym. It's a great hack for making friends as an adult, by the way.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you do something a little bit dangerous together and you form bonds quickly. But yeah, so I do a little bit of bouldering and then a little bit of top rope and lead climbing, and then have gotten outdoors a couple of times. Would love to get outdoors some more.
But, there's not many mountains in Detroit, though.
No, we are not famous. Yeah, I picked a weird city to get to get into rock climbing in. Yeah, we drive like 7.5 hours down to Kentucky to go climbing in the red. Usually.
Yep. I've done a little bit. I'm nowhere near even in the knowledge about like what to do, but I've done enough to have scared the shit out of myself. So yeah.
Oh, I scare the shit out of myself still every time I get on the wall.
Bouldering is not fun. Well, I asked that because I saw your post on LinkedIn about you hiking across Spain.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Camino de Santiago.
Yeah, that's right.
And I had heard of that once before, but only like, the recesses of my mind did it register what you were doing. And so it made me look it up a little bit more and learn it. But tell me about that. How did you like pick that?
So what's crazy is like, I say this is a lifelong dream and people say that shit all the time. it genuinely is, or as close as you can get.
Okay.
I first learned about the Camino de Santiago in like a middle school Spanish class. I was in 7th grade. I had a teacher who was from Spain,
Oh,
and she assigned us all different regions of the country. And I just drew out of a hat Galicia, which is the northwest corner of Spain.
okay.
And I think the capital of Galicia is Santiago de Compostela, which
Mm,
is where the Camino finishes, where all of the Camino routes, all of the
right. Right,
Camino
right, right.
de Santiago routes, there's a bunch of different routes, finish
Right.
um, at the cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, which
Right.
in the legend is that that's where the bones of St. James the Apostle ended up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's why the cathedral's there. That's why the city is there, and that's why this pilgrimage has cropped up that
Right, 'cause it's
walks
partially
there.
religious, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the legend, I mean, all that
it's
stuff.
religious in origin for
Right.
sure.
Right.
So the origin is it's a pilgrimage. It was, walked by people who wanted to get, I guess, closer to God or closer
Right.
to, wanted to do something hard and to sort of prove their faith,
Yeah.
something like that. These days, it's a lot less religious. I didn't hike it for religious reasons. I'm not a
Yeah.
particularly religious person. Grew up somewhat religious, but
Yeah.
these days I don't practice anything. And I would say I was actually kind of surprised how few people on the trail were
Mm.
religious. Like I would guess maybe 30% of the people I
Oh, okay.
met, like
Alright.
definitely felt like the minority, which
Okay.
was could have just been the group I was sort of self-selecting into.
Right.
But that was the impression I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of work. I mean, how far is it completely? Or
So
whatever you hiked, 'cause it's a
yeah,
long way.
yeah. So I did the Camino Frances, which is I believe the original route and the most famous, most popular route. And so the Camino Frances, if you do the traditional version, you start in the mountains of France, in the French Pyrenees, in a small town called Saint Jean Pied de Port. My French accent is horrible. um, um, and then you walk basically across northern Spain and end in Santiago de Compostela. And so I believe that section, that part is something like 480 or 490 miles, like 800 kilometers, something like that.
Oh my goodness.
Um, and then there's another section from Santiago to the coast that a lot of people will do.
Okay.
And I got a day into that with my sister and my girlfriend. And then we decided to bail and
Okay.
decided we'd had enough.
You'd had
So
enough.
yeah, we ended up walking. I walked about 490 miles, somewhere around there, give or take.
That's a long way, man.
It was. I was
How
on
long did
trail for like 42 days, I think.
42
Um,
days.
yeah, and that includes rest days. I took, I
Sure.
was not. I had a couple of friends who refused to take a rest day. They never wanted to walk less than 15 miles or something. And that wasn't me. I
Well,
was not.
yeah.
I was happy. I wanted to experience the country and meet people and
Wow.
see things as I
Yeah.
went. And so I took, probably 5 or 6 rest days along the way.
That is a serious sabbatical, my friend.
It was really cool. It
So, how much of that was, sleeping outdoors versus sleeping indoors?
I didn't sleep outdoors at all.
Okay.
So the
I saw your kit. I'll put a picture of the kit up. I
yeah,
saw your kit, your daily whatever you were carrying and stuff, and I didn't see any camping materials, but
yeah. So the Camino is different from a lot of the hikes we have here in the States, the
right.
Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, in that it's really you're walking from town to town. So
Okay.
in a given day, you might pass through 4 or 5 towns. And there's a ton of infrastructure. So there are hostels, or the term for like pilgrim hostels, pilgrim specific hostels is
Okay.
albergues.
Okay.
Um, and so to stay in an albergue, you have to have like a pilgrim's passport, which is something
Okay.
you just get for free when you start the Camino. Anyone
Huh.
can get one. Um, and so the intention is really to stay in albergues. They really kind of discourage camping,
What
because you
yeah.
have so many people walking it and it's not really
Yeah,
set up
right.
for it.
Right.
Um, I had some friends who did some wild cowboy camping,
Oh boy.
a couple of nights, but it never worked out for me to join them. So I let them have that fun, and I just stuck to the albergues.
That's funny, man. Well, tell me about it. Tell me from how did it start? I mean, what'd you do?
Yeah. So I flew in to Barcelona. I had a friend who has lived there for several years. So flew into Barcelona, got to hang out with him and his girlfriend for a day or two, um, and then took a train from Barcelona up to Pamplona, which was like the
Mhm.
biggest city, closest big city to Saint Jean.
Okay.
Um, and one of the first things that was just incredible that happened to me, I had most of the Camino, I didn't book anything. I just would walk town to town, um, and then figure out where I wanted to stop that night, find a
Yeah.
place to stay. A lot of the albergues are first come, first serve, don't even accept reservations. But a friend, one of my dad's best friends, has walked the Camino several times actually. And he had told me, hey, those first couple nights, you want to make sure you have something booked, everything fills up. So I booked the first couple
Mhm.
nights before I booked my train, and then realized, oh crap, the train gets in after the buses leave.
Oh,
So I got to get a taxi, an expensive taxi to drive me an hour and a half through the mountains
right.
to St. John. But I was
Mhm.
like, maybe there will be other people. Maybe I'll find someone
Yeah.
who will be willing to share the taxi with me. And so I'm standing in line waiting to get on my train. And like the very first person I meet on the Camino is a pilgrim from Barcelona hiking her second Camino. Her
All
name is
right.
Maria. And super nervous to talk to her. Like, my Spanish, I'd been taking Spanish lessons in preparation for a few months, but it was still
Right.
like rusty. I hadn't used it a
Yeah.
whole lot with anyone other than my Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
And so I'm like super nervous, but I like tap her on the shoulder and I'm like, disculpe, vas al camino? And she was super nice, said yes. And it turns out she had run into the same problem and had wanted to start in St. John, but thought she wasn't going to be able to. And so very first person I meet is like, yeah, sure, I'll share a taxi
Let's
with you,
figure this out.
stranger.
That's
Um,
cool.
and that was just kind of the experience the whole way. Like people were just so friendly and open, and
Mm.
the Camino just had this way of like things just worked out. It
What do
was
you
really
think that
cool.
is, man? Like, you're not gonna get that just like, in any time, anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
do you think it's just like the nature of everybody's on this, like, adventure,
Yeah.
you know?
So I mean, a lot of people will, say it's, has to do with the religious nature. They'll
Sure.
say it's God, they'll say it's magic, they'll say,
Right.
for me, that doesn't really jive with my worldview.
Right.
And so I think it's simpler than that. I think it's just when you get a bunch of people together um, to do a hard thing,
Yeah.
there's something about the nature of A, doing a hard thing together,
Yeah.
and then B, knowing that you're all here for kind of the same reasons, for similar
Mhm.
reasons, that just opens people up and gets them. And there's enough people walking. Like part of the magic of the Camino, I was really afraid before I went about like how crowded it was going to be. I'd heard people sort of saying, oh, it's gotten so busy these days,
Right.
it's
Right.
impossible. But that's the magic of it. That's what made, to me, that's where the magic comes from, is it's all these people walking the same steps, these steps that have been walked for thousands of years. Um, and they're all
That's cool.
doing this hard thing together. And so when you see someone who needs help, you help them. When
Yeah.
you're always sharing things from your pack, you're offering people
Isn't that great?
chocolate, you're offering people a band-aid, or, whatever people need, there's probably someone coming not far behind you who has that thing, has that skill, has that experience, and can help out.
It's so great.
It's really cool.
I really wish it carried over more into, like, everyday life because life is just as hard. Come
It
on,
is.
y'all.
You're so right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so take me so what was one of the most gnarly parts? Like, something that you might be like, let's not do that again."
Um, so, the I mean, the Camino was hard, man.
Yeah.
It was
490 miles, 500. I'm going to go and just round it up. 500 miles is like,
it
that's
was
not,
hard.
I don't care what you're doing. That's not easy.
Yeah, it was hard. It was great. I loved it. I really did. Like, just I got there, and I had lost my job a few months before. I got fired from a company, great company. Still think really highly of them. Still have a lot of great friends there, but we just weren't a great fit. And so I got fired in July. And so I was sort of going into my Camino expecting to be thinking about that all the time, thinking about what I was going to do with my life. And for the first like 3 weeks, I didn't think about shit.
Yeah.
I just thought
Right.
about like, wow, look at that beautiful mountain. Hey,
Right.
how do I talk to this stranger walking next? It was so that was incredible. Um, but
But that's meditative in its own right.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like not that's why, like I think about that. Like they always say, I get my best ideas in the shower or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like that's because you're not obsessing over it.
Hmm.
And it's like just subconscious and the universe just work it out.
Yeah. Um, gnarliest parts. So I think everyone except for my friend Jay, who I met. Jay was this 24-year-old kid, had just gotten his master's in primatology.
Whoa.
Was like
Yeah.
an amateur kickboxer,
Wow.
or sorry, amateur boxer. His parents were Muay Thai black belts or something like that. But
Oof.
he was he was a boxer and chess player. Really interesting guy.
Wow.
Um, he's the only person I met who never seemed to get tired. I think one day he complained
Right.
about being tired, but
Well,
everyone else hits this wall at some
yeah.
point.
Okay.
And
Where
so
was your wall? What mile was your wall?
I first few days I was like, "Oh, this is easy. I've got this. I'm feeling great." The first couple days from St. John, you're walking straight up mountains like the Pyrenees. It's really steep, it's hard, and I was like, "I feel great." I was expecting to hurt, and I was like, "I feel great. This is
Right.
awesome. I'm walking fast. I'm like, ahead of most people. This is nothing." And then like
That's great.
I think it was about a week in, and
A
I
week.
just hurt. My feet were killing me. I
Mm.
started to get like a shin splint one day, which scared the crap out of me because I
Yeah.
know that those can get bad. And so I was like, I
Yeah.
was worried
And you wanna
they'd
finish. Yeah.
want to finish. Yeah. Um, I, I was like, my ankles started to hurt so bad that I was worried. I was like, is this normal? Do I have a stress fracture? What's going
Mhm.
on here? Um, and then I slowly started to form my Camino family. There was a group of about 8 of us walking together. Um, and we walked together for 3 or 4 weeks, and it was fantastic. I love them. They were really, really neat people from Poland, from
That's cool.
Jay was from the UK, Fimco was from the Netherlands. There were a couple of
Huh.
us who were American. It was
Right.
really cool group. But this group liked to walk far and fast for the most
You're
part.
like,
And so I'm like, I'm hurting, and then I get sick. I just came down with a cold or something, and I was like, I was worried. Is this COVID?
oh, man.
Am
Yeah.
I giving people COVID? Do I
Yeah.
need to not be staying in
You're thinking
albergues
about
every
that.
night?
Yeah.
Um, um, and so that was like kind of the first rough patch was those, about a weekend, there were probably 4 days or so where I was just hurting
Mm.
and feeling crappy, and I was trying not to drag the group down. Um, and but I was, they were all teasing me because I'm mostly a pretty upbeat guy, but
Mm.
those few days I was complaining.
What's wrong, man? My
um,
feet hurt.
but so that was the first sort of hurdle.
Mm.
And um, then there was the next big hurdle. So our group walked together for 3 or 4 weeks. And then we split up into 2 groups, walked together as 2 groups for a few days. And then I really wanted to go out on my own again. Uh, I was,
Right.
I had plans to meet my sister on like a certain day. And so the group kind of wanted to walk a little bit faster than I did. I wanted to make sure I didn't get to that town. Um, I've since heard through hikers say, don't ever plan to meet someone in a location on a day. Pick one of the two, a
Right.
location or a day. But
Huh.
but
Yeah, because you gotta either get there. Yeah, I
you
can
got to
see that.
time. It's tough to
Yeah, I
time
don't.
things just
Yeah.
right. But so I had some extra time I needed to kill, and being alone has always been hard for me. I'm an extrovert. I love being around
Mm,
people. And so I wanted to spend some time alone again,
yeah.
towards the end of my Camino before I was going to be with my sister, who I would finish the Camino with. Um, and so I went out on my own again, and the first few days were really not bad. I met some new people. I had some really nice walks by myself. Got some time to think. By now I was starting to think a little bit about what was coming after the
Yeah.
Camino, and I'd moved from just like everything's new to okay, now I know my
Yeah.
routine, so I can think again.
Yeah.
Um, so I had some nice long walks to myself. Met some cool people, but then we started to cross into Galicia, and we're getting close to the end of October, beginning of November, and Galicia in um, in the winter is cold and wet.
Mm,
Um,
not the best
Galicia,
hiking weather.
no, Galicia is actually, think, like I think the name Galicia. I shouldn't be saying this shit because I I have not fact checked myself, but I think that there's some commonality between Galicia and Gaelic, and like
Okay,
to say it, and the terrain is very similar to like Scotland, and
got you.
it's like uh, grassy,
Yeah.
hilly, and just like rain.
Yeah,
Um,
but not necessarily friendly. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
um, and so the the day that I think was the hardest single day of my whole Camino was the steepest climb on the Camino is walking up to Osabrero, which is this small town on the top of a mountain right before you get to Galicia.
Mm,
Galicia is sort of separated from Spain by mountains, the rest of Spain. Um, and so as we're walking up this mountain, it is raining. It's probably 40 degrees, and the wind is ripping
well,
through
you
these
wanted to
mountains.
suffer. I mean, there you go.
And man, I got it. I was just
Yeah.
chilled to the bone. I I hiked those days in short shorts,
Oof.
because I like my skin dried faster than any of the clothes I had in my pack would. And
Makes
so
sense.
I was like, I'm just gonna tough it out, and my legs are gonna be cold, but at least
Yeah.
I'll be able to dry
Right.
once I get somewhere. Um, and it was just I had a rain jacket and an umbrella with me, a lightweight hiking umbrella. The umbrella was useless. The
Yeah.
wind just completely useless.
Right.
And you know, you hike even a great rain jacket, you hike in the rain long enough and
Yeah, it's
you're
still
wet.
wet. Yep.
It's just there is
Yep.
no rain jacket that has been invented that can keep
It's
out.
not it's water resistant, not waterproof.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was tough. And then just on the tail end of that, as the weather's starting to improve, I had probably the thing that ended up being the toughest part of my Camino, which was I got just wrecked by bed bugs.
I saw
Um,
that in your post. Yeah. That's like
it
a nightmare, man.
it was brutal. I woke up, there was one day early on in the Camino where I'd woken up from a, kind of nasty albergue with like 2 or 3 bites, and it was like,
Uh-oh.
maybe they're bed bugs, maybe they're not, who knows?
Right.
And so I washed all my stuff, it was fine, never didn't see any more bites
Yeah.
come up, kept walking. But this time, I ended up it took a
Mm.
few days for them to all show up, but by the 3rd day after I'd started to notice them, I think I had somewhere between 60 and 90 bites.
Ah,
I was
yeah.
just destroyed.
What do you
Um,
do when you're out like that? I mean, you got no resources really. I mean, what are you doing?
it's
Just
tough.
suffering through it?
a little bit of suffer through it, a little bit
Yeah.
of just do the best you can with what you got.
Right.
So the thing that kills them is heat. Like
Yeah.
that's from
Okay.
everything I've read, that's the most reliable thing. And so I just started for the next like for basically the rest of my trip, every time I could, I would just wash and dry all my clothes on and my pack and everything on the highest possible heat
Yeah.
I could find. Um,
Oh man.
and the thing that's really insidious about them is like, so first off, like they're not dangerous. They're just annoying.
Right.
But, they can spread and you don't want to be
Yep.
the guy who brings bed
Yeah.
bugs into
Yeah.
an
You don't want to
outfit.
be the bed bug
And
guy.
yeah, and you feel gross and you feel like you don't want to tell people about it and you feel weird and
Right.
um but um you know, I hightailed it to the nearest town once I realized I had them, and I found a laundromat, and I
Mm.
just threw everything in, and I just
Yeah.
kept doing it until the bites stopped showing up.
Oh
Um,
man.
and I will say I had this, like I was really freaking out at the start. My sister met me, like, a day or 2 after I got the bed bugs, which I hated because she
Yeah.
I
You're
was
like, hey.
like, "Hey, welcome, what's up? I've got bed bugs."
Now you
So
have bed bugs too. Yeah.
um but we were staying in this I'd rented a private room for us for a couple nights because I wanted her to have a good night's sleep
Right.
when she first got there. Um and I had this freak out where I found a single dead bed bug in the room. And I was just like, "Oh no,
No.
did I bring this? Was this here?" Like, um, and I tell um the owner of the hotel, and he's like, "Okay, I see it. It's like a single bug. I spray this thing he's saying this to me in Spanish, and
Yeah.
we're trying to communicate in like my
It's like
little
I
bit
get
of
a bunch of
Spanish,
you
a little
guys
bit of
to come
English.
through here. Chill out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, "Chill, it's
Yeah.
okay. Like, I clean this stuff all the time, like, look at the
Right.
mattress, there's no bed bugs, like,
Yeah. It's like
everything's
it's dead
okay,
for a reason. Yeah.
but if you want, you can have the other room." And I was like, "Okay, maybe, let me think about it." And then I'm, like, so paranoid, I'm so nervous, I start
Yeah.
searching the room, like, looking in this
Well,
other room,
yeah.
like, trying to see if there's anything, and he comes in and finds me, and he's like he says to me in Spanish, and I wish I can't remember the Spanish words, but he basically says, like, "Look, man, like, heart to heart, you gotta get over this. If you like, this is going to end your Camino." Like, I've walked
He's
he
like,
says,
bro.
"I've walked the Camino 5 times. Like, this shit happens. Like, you need to get over this or your
That's
Camino is
awesome.
already done. You're
Yeah.
over. It's done."
Yeah.
And you know, it was kind of
Yeah.
a slap in the face. It was like he was blunt, he was
Good wake up
tough,
call.
but
Yeah.
it was a bit of a slap in the face, and it didn't they didn't totally get out of my head, I think, until I got home and was able to,
Sure.
like, fully wash everything and, like,
Yeah.
get back. But, um, I think he helped me get through the last, like, couple of weeks where
Oh, that's incredible.
I was just
Yeah, because
walking.
that's the thing, like, you're saying a couple of weeks, it's not like, "Oh, finish your hike, you'll just, get in late tonight or whatever." No, you were talking about a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Now I
Yeah.
kept washing all my stuff every chance I could get.
Sure, sure.
Um,
But that's
uh,
why you did it, right? You wanted those experiences.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
bed bugs aside, but yeah,
Um,
that's great, man. Well, I'm gonna hack off of your post here a little bit. You have, I mean, I saw on LinkedIn and I saw you made a blog post. I'll link that up too, but your biggest takeaways. I wanna
yeah,
parse some of these with you.
yeah, let's do it.
The first one, you have, "The Camino is hard, but that's what makes it worth doing."
Yeah.
What are you saying with that? I mean, I would I would agree. Like, I've never done the hike you've done, but I mean,
Mhm.
that's hard things pay off, right?
Yeah, and, I talked about when I was talking about the magic of the Camino, like, doing something hard with other people, um, really bonds you. It gives you a shared language, you
Yeah.
know, trauma bonding, I guess, in a way. It's a
Yeah,
for
for sure.
um,
You trained jujitsu for a while, didn't you? Or I don't know if you
a
still
little bit.
do,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, you get it. The
Yeah,
climbing too.
yep. Yeah, climbing is very similar too. You're putting yourself in a dangerous position.
It's like
You're doing things that
microdosing
hurt.
trauma bonding.
What's that? Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
microdosing trauma bonding.
Yeah, it kind of is. Um, and, I talked about, like, those first few weeks, my mind was clearer than it had been in
Yeah.
years, and it was because, there was nothing to do but walk, and I was thinking so much about where am I gonna stay? How am I gonna
Right,
communicate? How do I talk to
right,
people?
right.
How do I make friends? Damn, my feet hurt.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
um, and so it really clears your head, um, and you know, you're left with this feeling of like, I did something. You're left with this feeling
yeah.
of fulfillment. And, I often joked about starting a company. Um, People would ask me like how it was going, how I liked, I ran an agency for a number of years called Crit. You know this, obviously,
Mhm.
since you were one of the mentors who helped us get the company off the ground.
Whee!
um, But, people would ask me, like, how I liked my job or how things were going, and I'd say for
Right.
a while, I would say it's fun, and then I stopped saying that because I was like, "It's not always fun." In fact,
It's
it's
work now.
usually not fun,
Right.
but I finally started saying it's really fulfilling. Like
Okay.
it's hard, but it's really fulfilling.
Right,
Um,
right.
and the Camino was
Yeah.
the same way, it was this long,
So
hard thing that just made you feel clear and lighter in a lot of ways and made me feel like I was doing something that I could be proud of. And yeah, I just it it simplifies
yeah,
things.
man. I don't guess you're in the, you said you remember a bureau for a while, Bureau
Hmm.
Slack. I mean,
Yeah,
if my regular listeners know Carl and they know the bureau, but, I don't guess you're in the SoCo Slack anymore either. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But
I was for years, but I don't think I am anymore. Yeah.
there was a conversation that started late last week and it went over the weekend, I think. And it was several posts long, and people were making long posts about this very similar subject. And it started off with like comparing the generations or something like that, which is like where we always go, like Gen Z's lazy or whatever. Which I don't subscribe to that. But and somebody made the post of like, and you've probably seen it where it's like hard times make hard men make easy times make easy men make hard times, like, or people, like,
Hmm.
whatever. I don't know, some variation of that or whatever. And it was like, you
Sure.
are here. You are at the point where easy times make easy people, and shit's hard, because of that, or it's going to be. It's like, I don't ever want to blame generations because I think that's just mentally lazy. We're not being honest with ourselves, but I do think, because I think it goes across the board. But I think people in general don't know what it means to complete something extremely difficult. I don't, that's not scientific. I don't have
Hmm.
percentages or whatever, but I know a lot of people that I talk to, they would look at what you did, 500 miles hiking. What are you, insane? Like, what's wrong with you? Meanwhile, thousands of people have done the same pilgrimage, right? It's like
Yeah.
a thing that's happened over generations. So it's not out of the question, but it's just like there's a certain person, I guess, in the population that just can't fathom, putting themselves out there and doing that. I think those are the people that we're all responding to. I commend you for what you did, and I like, I don't know where I'm going with this other than like I wish more people would do things like this.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I think we do need to be careful. Like, there's different versions of hard for
Yeah.
everybody.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
there's parts about today's world that are harder, especially for people who aren't born with as much
Hmm.
uh, resources or access as a lot of us are. Um, it's hard to you know, claw your way through the world today. And it's
Yeah.
hard to live if you're making, you know, less than $30,000 a year, which at
Yep.
one point in time would have been a pretty good amount of money to live off of.
Right. Right.
Um, and really, it's even that's more than that's hard. And so I think that there are plenty of people who have different versions of hard. And so I think it's good for us to remember that. But I will say that, like, I do think that, doing hard things does make doing other hard things feel less daunting,
Yeah,
and
I do too.
that training, that, like, exposing yourself, like, we were joking about microdosing trauma bonding, but,
Right.
like, microdosing hard things,
That's yeah.
um, I was just listening to, um, some podcasts, and God, again, I need to be careful about just spouting
I do
spouting
too.
shit where
I do
I
too.
don't necessarily know the
Yeah.
science behind it or anything. But someone was talking about how there had been this study in of, like, brain science where, people who did something they didn't want to do, that, like, they saw as, like, hard and uncomfortable, and that some part of their brain, like, kind of lit up, and over
Mm.
time, we're remarkably good at adjusting,
Right.
um, to our circumstances, whatever they are.
Mhm.
Um, and so, like, over time, the things that feel hard start to feel less hard and less uncomfortable.
That's
And
right.
so then your capacity grows. It's like
Yeah.
weightlifting, it's like training at anything. Your capacity
Mhm.
grows when you put yourself under stress. Now, you
Yep.
also need to take the right amount of recovery, and you
Right.
need
It's
to,
important too.
you need to find
Yeah.
balance to things,
Yep.
or else you just break.
Yeah, you'll
Um,
burn out or break or
yeah,
explode or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
Hurt
man,
the people around you who you care about, you know?
like a 500-mile hike, I mean, for somebody, running a 5K for the first time might be that 500-mile hike.
Mhm.
Like, it's whatever it is, but you I mean, you see so many people, like, navigating towards, like, doing a Spartan race or, whatever it is. Like, I think that's why jujitsu is so popular right now,
Mhm.
because it's like it's this combined hard experience that if I wanna get anywhere with, I have to commit to it for more than a couple of months. I've gotta do this thing for, I mean, what, on average, 3 years, 2 years to get a blue belt,
Yeah.
which is the first level. Like, you gotta stick with it. You have to suffer every day a little bit and build and build and build and build, and that's just I think that's
And
what we need to
jujitsu
do.
suffering is a unique kind of suffering. You're
Well,
like,
it's yeah,
you're signing
it's
yourself up to
demoralizing.
having your face smashed into someone's armpit,
Yeah,
sweaty
I know.
armpit, and, like, get
Constantly.
rope burn from, like, the
Yeah.
gi,
Oh,
and,
man,
like,
I know. I know.
it's
That's the worst. It was, like, on the side of your face after class. Yeah, it's the
it's such
worst.
a it's such a strange sport, but man, I loved it. I've thought a lot about going back to it. Um,
So your other one here, I'm gonna combine 2 of them. It's
okay,
easier to make friends on the Camino than to be alone, and the
yeah,
people are the best part.
yeah.
I think we
Um,
touched on that a little bit, but what's your what are you driving home there?
and this might be a little bit, you know, this is who I am. I'm a touchy-feely guy. I'm always in my emotions, and I love people. Um if I've had to do a bunch of those personality tests over the years, and
Okay.
I can predict what I'm going to get before I take it,
While you
because I'm
take
like,
it.
whatever the most touchy-feely, like, love people option
Got you.
is, I
Yeah, yeah.
guarantee you I'm gonna end up there.
Huh. Okay.
So I love people. But I remember being really nervous, going into the Camino, about making friends. I'd heard people
Right.
talk about your Camino family, finding your Camino family, and I was like, what if I don't find them? I know myself well enough to know that, like, I
Right.
don't always handle isolation super well. And so I was like, what if it takes me a couple weeks and I'm really, I'm doing
Yeah.
this hard thing, I'm tired, and I'm not talking to anybody, I'm feeling isolated.
Mm.
And people would sometimes look at me like I was crazy for doing the Camino. They were like, "You're
Yeah.
going alone? Like,
I'm
who are
sh
you
Yeah,
going
of
with?"
course. Yeah.
Was the first question I would get.
Mhm.
Um, and just, like, I think the 42 days that I was there were maybe, 2 days where
Mm.
I walked more than an hour without seeing somebody and having a conversation. Um,
Hmm.
just,
That's
the
cool.
popularity of the trail, there's people
Right.
around. And so many people go alone that, again, it's
It's
that
part of the culture of
nature.
doing it.
Yeah, there's this culture of, you're walking and you just strike up a conversation with the person you're walking next to.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell else are you gonna do?
Yeah, and there's, and some of this can get a little toxic because like there's a little bit of like you can get into like comparison and stuff, but
Sure.
there is this like there's this Camino small talk that just happens. That's like,
Right. Right.
who are you? Where are you
Yeah. What do
from?
you? Yeah.
Where'd you start? Where are you walking to?
Yeah.
And like, within a few questions, you now know something about someone. You've broken the
Yeah.
ice, and now you can start talking and chatting.
Right. Right.
Um, and so it was just like it was really incredible to me how easy it was to make friends and just how many
Mm.
people wanted to engage with you and wanted to like spend time talking. One of the first nights that I was there, I was staying in a small private albergue, and just everyone who came in, I was just like, "Hey, you want to cook a dinner together?" And ended up pulling together this group of people who were all ages, all from
Right.
all over the world, and
It's
we
pretty cool.
cooked dinner and drank too much wine and
That's a
just
good way to make friends. Yeah.
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 So that was really striking to me was just how open people were and how easy it was to connect. And then just, you know, people have asked me when I got back, what was your favorite part? And
Yeah.
at first I started to think like which section of the hike? And then I realized the easier answer was just the people. Like
That's cool.
the thing that I will remember
Right.
the
Right. Right.
most, like I'll remember some images and stuff, but I'm gonna remember conversations arguing about politics with my friend Kuba from Poland. And I'm gonna remember conversations like
Mm.
giggling and shaving my beard so that I was rocking a matching mustache with my friend Luis.
That's called a
And
mustache. Yeah. Yeah.
not my best look. um and talking to Olga about our careers and our relationships and like how we
Yeah.
wanted to like what we wanted to do when we got back and
Had
um
you traveled overseas, like, to another country before? I think
yeah,
we've talked before. I think you've traveled a little bit, right?
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I luckily my parents have I've traveled a couple times with them, went to
Yeah.
Germany for a few days when I was a kid. um And then I lived in Scotland for 4 months in
Okay.
college.
Right.
And so the bulk of my overseas traveling I did while I was living in
Right.
Scotland.
That's
So
different enough.
I studied
Yeah.
abroad and, mostly I traveled with people while I was there,
Yeah.
traveled with
Sure.
friends or with the girl I was dating at the time. But I did, like, the first night in Scotland, had a similar experience where I stayed in a hostel by myself and made friends with a French guy, and we ended up drinking too many White
Right.
Russians and hanging out with some
Well, it's the
Scottish innkeepers.
the point being is it's really, really helpful to get different perspective, but I
Yeah.
found that the perspectives from people in completely different places,
Mhm.
it's pretty invaluable, like, 'cause
It's cool.
it helps put your stuff in perspective a little bit faster, I think, when they're like, I mean, they don't have to deal with the same stuff we do back here,
And
you know?
there's a palpable difference in culture. Like, culture
Yeah.
is one of these things we talk about all the time, and it's hard to
Mhm.
articulate what it is, and, I think a
Mhm.
lot of it comes down to, like, culture is kinda defined by what people value,
Yeah.
and you see
Absolutely.
what people value by the actions they take more than
Yeah.
anything else.
That's right.
Um
I love
We have
that.
a culture in the US that really, really revolves around work,
Yeah.
and it
Mhm.
it really hit me on the trail how, like, it's hard to see it
Yep.
until you step away from it.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
I'm getting at. Yep.
and when I got into conversations with Kuba and Olga, with these friends who didn't see it the same
Mhm.
way,
Yeah. Yeah.
my friend Kuba, um, so his goals for the Camino, he never wanted to stay anywhere that cost more than 15 euros. Never
Mm.
wanted to spend more than 2 euros on a bottle of wine, which you can do and drink
Well,
incredible wine.
yeah,
Um,
Spain, I'm sure, yeah.
Spain, yeah. But the reason was Cuba, like, I would ask him about his career, and I
It's
never
like
really got a clear answer.
right. It's a
His
means to an end.
Yeah, he would work odd jobs, make enough money, and then travel until he couldn't. And I met
Mhm.
multiple people like that.
And we look
Um,
down on that here in America.
yeah,
We're like, "That person's a bum."
But this guy is living a life that like so many people would envy. He went
Yep.
from um he went from the Camino to South America to spend 2 months cycling from
Wow.
Ecuador to Colombia.
Wow.
And, you know, he just he chooses to, like, have these experiences.
Yep.
Um, and, he walked most of the Camino. I came to the Camino with a bunch of, like, fairly nice new gear. He came with a backpack that was falling apart and a straw
Right.
hat
Yeah.
that he found on the side of the road that, like, slowly became less and less of a hat. It was a running joke that it was like, at
Barely
what point
hanging.
is it no longer a hat? Um,
Right. Right.
and, like, my friend Olga, the same thing, like, you know, in a lot of ways, like, I took this 2-month trip, and then I came back, and, like, I came back and started figuring out what I was gonna do for work.
Yeah.
And my friend Olga is still in Asia, exploring,
Right.
exploring and,
Yeah.
meeting people and having experiences like we had on the
Mhm.
Camino. And here I am, and I'm excited about the work that I'm doing. I'm really excited
Yeah.
to push forward, and it was the right decision for me, I think, in a lot of ways. Um, in part because, like, it's hard to escape the culture that we're in, and I have a
Yep.
girlfriend and I have 2 cats and I have,
Yep. Yeah, you gotta
there's
come home to that, yeah.
yeah, I'm not
Otherwise
gonna spend another 6 months out
right.
tramping around the world because
Right.
there are things here that I wanna be a part of and invest in.
Yep.
But, um, but yeah,
It is funny, the
it's
culture thing,
striking.
like, uh, I have not my family, but my wife's family, she herself and, her mother and stuff, they're Swedish,
Mhm,
and, the first time I went over there, it was very telling that the cultural difference between, like, us Americans and them, just in the simple jobs that they held,
mhm,
because they looked at, like one of their family members drives a mail truck,
mhm.
one's like a janitor, even the way I just said it. One's like
Yeah,
a teacher, and I think one was like a scientist or something. They were all equally at the table discussing things,
mhm,
all the same level. But if you do
yeah,
that here, the janitors at the table were like, "Bro, you're a janitor. Like, what do you know about so and so?" You know? And it's like, why do we do that in our culture where we like rank people by like the job they do or the education level they have, you know? It's just
yeah,
it's something that's as I've experienced the world, it just doesn't sit right with me, you know?
yeah. I met a couple of teachers on the Camino who, you know and not that it should be all about pay, but who are paid better and
Yeah, that's the other
are
yeah.
really well respected in the countries where they live in. It's this really
Mhm.
valuable, um, seen as a really valuable profession. Um, I walked for several days with a woman from Denmark, who talked a lot about, she was, a caretaker now. I can't remember. I don't think she had always been, but for several years she'd been a caretaker, and essentially, um, she was a mom. She had a couple of kids, um, and um, she would was essentially, you know, work with people who either had special needs or
Mhm.
elderly people who needed extra help. She would come in and provide physical assistance, um, and she didn't want to retire because she
Yeah.
liked what she
That's
did and she just wanted to help. And she talked
yeah.
about how she picked that career, and it was all about wanting to help people and wanting to
Yeah.
make a difference in someone's
And
life in a
that's how
small
it
way,
should be,
day in
man,
and
and the
day.
culture shouldn't
Yeah,
look at you out of the corner of their eye because you're doing that work, you know?
yeah.
It's just weird.
One more thing that I want to say, one more little story about just like people mattering. Um, so my sister came and joined me for the last week of the Camino, um, and that was a really incredible experience. Um, it was really fun to share with her. It was also tough. We love each other. We're really close, but we bickered like hell on the
Oh,
Camino.
well,
And
they're brother and sister. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, but towards the end of our, so we got to Santiago, got the really incredible experience, felt the joy of sort of finishing,
Yeah.
and it was pouring on us when we got to Santiago.
Mhm.
I was half convinced we were going to get struck by lightning a block away from the
Oh, man.
cathedral, and I was going to be pissed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so we get to the cathedral. We spend a couple days in Santiago. My friends who had walked ahead of me were still there, and so we got to meet up with them and hang out
That's
with them
cool.
for a couple days, which was really fun. And then our plan was to walk to the coast, which was another 70 miles, something like that, 60
Sheesh.
miles. Uh, Maybe not quite that much. We were going to do it over 4 or 5 days. Maybe it was only like 50 miles, 80
I don't know.
kilometers, something
Sounds
like
like a
that.
long way.
Yeah. And it was raining. It was, the weather had been rainy for the last
Mhm.
week. We were still in Galicia. So it was kind of muddy, but we were like, all right, we're going to try it. Let's go for it. And my sister's a champ. Her feet were killing her the entire
Mm.
time. Like, it took a week for mine to start hurting. Hers started hurting like day 2.
Mm.
And she gets blisters easily. Um, and um, so like she was in a lot of pain. Hiked the
Mm.
120 kilometers that she did with me like a champ. Never complained. But we were worried a couple times for her. Like, can you make it?
Right.
Are we doing the right thing by pushing through this?
Yeah. Should you chill? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so, but she did. She pushed through. We made it Santiago, and then we had a couple rest days, so she was feeling good. So we were like, all right, we're gonna go again. Um, and then we got a day in, and um, we just decided to quit. And at
Mm.
first, I really struggled with that decision. Both, I had it in my head that I was going to walk to the coast, and I wanted to be able to say I had walked across a country,
Mm.
ignoring the fact that people will still say that I did
Yeah. You
that.
did.
Like, no
Yeah.
one cares that no one
You
cares
walked
about
across
the
the country.
details. Um, but so I was really struggling, and so at one point I was even like thinking like, if she and Maddie, my girlfriend, who Maddie was going to walk with us to the coast as well, if they want to stop, maybe I'll meet them at the coast or something like
Mhm.
that. And a couple things happened. One, I realized how stupid that was. Like, how stupid it was that I was so determined to like check off this dumb
Mm.
little box rather than spending time with my girlfriend and my sister in a foreign country, which was like kind of the whole point of them being
Right.
there.
Right.
And the other thing that happened is I realized, like, we ultimately decided to quit. We decided to quit before we got to the coast. And I told myself I was doing it for my sister. I told myself it was because her feet were hurting her and I was doing the right thing. I was, kind of
Sure.
like being noble or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we ended up getting in a little bit of a fight about that because it really made her feel uncomfortable because she was like, I didn't ask you to quit. I didn't
Mm.
want you to quit. And what I realized was I was protecting my ego, saying
Mm.
like, oh, you know, I'm quitting for you. I'm not quitting
Isn't
for
that
me.
great?
I would keep going on. But the truth is, I was ready to quit. I had done
You've
enough.
done it.
I'd been wrecked by bed bugs. I had a stomach ache at this
Yeah.
point. I got a stomach bug right at the end, which is super fun. um,
It's
and, um, and I was quitting for me, not for her.
right.
And so when I talk about like the people being the most important part, that's part of it too, was that experience of like both putting my ego a little bit above my sister for a minute there, and like
Yeah.
I was trying to protect that more than I was, trying to think about her
Man.
feelings and how she was going to feel about the way I was talking about this. And then to like, you know, for a little while I did want to push on without her,
Sure.
and that was so stupid. And
Mm.
so um yeah, when I say the people were the most important part, I mean the new people I met and the relationships that I had, with my sister and my girlfriend who came and joined me, and
It's
like
great.
it was just a reminder that those things matter so much more um than
Wow.
ego or box checking or
I love that
any
you
of it.
talked about ego, man. That is it takes a lot of self introspection and self-awareness to be able to see that in the first place. Like that's strong. I mean, most people don't ever would do that and would never even register with them at any point. They would just argue on and keep going or whatever.
Well, luckily I've got a sister who's willing to call me on my shit.
Oh,
So
hey, we all need that though. We all need that friend, like
yeah.
you could probably say it in a way that is not quite as direct as a sister might say it, but we all need that friend. I can only imagine. Like, you big dumbass. But the ego is a funny thing, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone in class. I teach martial arts. I've been doing that for a while, and I had to. I wasn't being mean to them. Like, I guess I was calling them down, but I was just like, "Hey, man, like you." So, thinking about compliments,
Mhm.
right? So it's such a noble, like it can be such a noble thing, or you can lift others up by giving them a compliment,
Mhm.
and it's a good thing. But you can also compliment someone, do that at the same time, and then also sort of backhandedly give your ego a boost. And I'll give an example. Hey, man, that was a great technique. Most beginners can't do it that good.
Mhm.
Did you have to put that part in there?
Yeah.
Did you have to say beginner? Like, can it not just be a good execution of whatever they were doing? Did you have to put yourself, because by saying that, you're not a beginner.
Yeah.
They are. And it's just like, and I had to tell the person was doing that, and I was like, hey, just think about the way you compliment people.
My sister pointed out there a lot of that happening on the Camino that I hadn't seen until she came in with fresh
Weird.
eyes and saw it. She started the Camino in Saria, which is like the
Mm.
last major city that you can start in order to get your like official Compostela, your certificate at the end.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people start there.
Okay.
And I mentioned earlier that there's this conversation that would happen on the Camino, like,
Yeah.
hey, where are you from? Where'd you start? Where are you walking to? And like at first that seems really innocuous, and it serves a purpose, right? It
And people
does
are like,
serve a
well, I started
purpose.
10 miles before you. Yeah.
There's some of that.
Mhm.
There is some of that. The
There's
Camino is
always
not
that.
immune from ego and
Yeah.
from people kind of
Right.
boosting themselves up,
Mhm.
and so she, unfortunately, she got a little bit of that as someone who
Mm.
started in Saria instead of
Mhm.
starting at the beginning or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
When none of that really matters. Like you're
Yeah.
doing a hard thing whether you start in Saria, whether you start in St. John.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's um and so there's some of that happens, and
Yep.
it took a fresh perspective
It's
for me
very
to see it.
subtle. It's very
Mhm.
subtle, but it's real.
Mhm.
And I think it can build to other things if you don't kind of check yourself on some of that stuff,
Yeah.
you know. All right, man. You got the last one here. It's amazing how happy you can be with so little.
Oh man.
I
This
like that one.
one
I have to agree.
this one I mean, this is the thing that just kept hitting me over and over again. And I, I'll openly say I think it's already been the hardest thing to like hang on to
Mm,
since
sure.
being back.
Yeah.
We talk about
Right.
culture,
Yeah.
and the culture on the Camino makes it easy to see this, and the culture here in the US,
Yeah.
I think it makes it really hard
Yeah.
sometimes to
Well, you
see
got
it
back
a
home to
bit.
all your stuff.
Yeah. So, I was just hit. I started the Camino staying mostly in smaller private albergues. I was going into this really with probably more savings than a lot of the people who do. Um, and so I could afford it. And I'd heard these horror stories about, so in most towns, there will be at least one, usually only one, maybe two public municipal albergues. They're run by
Okay.
the state or the town. They're often big. They have, kind of bare bones amenities, um, and they're really cheap. And then there will be a bunch of private albergues that are often smaller. Sometimes they have private rooms. Sometimes they
Mm,
have small dormitories where there's only 4 bunks instead of 20 bunks in a room.
mhm.
Um, they might have nice kitchens and different
Sure.
things
Not bed
available.
bugs. Yeah.
Well, you say that. I think I
Yeah.
got the bed bugs
Oh.
in a private
Oh,
albergue.
I've stayed in hotels too that I've paid plenty of money for, and you're like, "This place has bed bugs."
Yep. But so I was staying in private albergues the first few nights, and then when I met Jay, that first friend, who ended up becoming, a core part of my Camino
Yeah.
family, Jay was a student,
Mhm.
recent graduate, and so Jay and one of the friends he was walking with were only staying in municipals.
Yeah.
And so I was like, cool, I need to experience this. I'll stay with
Yeah.
you guys tonight.
Yeah.
Um, and it was it just like very quickly, like I got there and I'd had a great experience in the private albergues too, but I'd also I'd run into a couple of folks who were a little more conservative than me.
Mm.
They would sort of say things every now and then that I'd be like, we might have different worldviews. We might be walking this
Right.
for slightly different
For
reasons.
sure. Yeah.
Um, and then I get to these municipal albergues, and I was just like, oh, these are my people.
Mhm.
Um,
That's
and
cool.
the community was just so like people talk to each other a lot more, I found, in the municipals than in the private
Mm.
albergues. Like private albergues, people were kind of either with a group or by themselves, and
Well,
like
yeah.
it took some effort to get people talking. And the municipals, everyone was cooking dinner in
Oh, they're just
small
good.
groups
Yeah.
here and there. People
Mm.
you and because there was usually only one municipal per town, you'd see the same people every night. And so
Okay.
you'd end up making friends and forming relationships. And so my friends and I stayed in municipals pretty much the entire way.
Yeah.
And even though the beds, maybe the mattresses weren't as comfortable or like the showers were a little dirtier,
Yeah.
I just was so happy. And like I said, I felt so light and felt so
That's cool.
clear. And I realized I was like, I took two pairs of shorts, 2 shirts, and 1 pair of pants, um, and a blanket and, like, a couple of little things, and I was staying in these municipal albergues that cost €12 a night. I was eating, you know, meals that were really simple, meat and potatoes and, cost, maybe another 5 or 10. I was spending
Wow.
30 or €40 a day a lot of days, and I was just totally happy,
That's
and
cool.
I
That's
felt
great.
really good,
Mm.
and I was just like, "Shit, like, it is cheap to be
Yeah, you're
happy."
like, "Should I spend that on dinner alone?"
Yeah,
Like, "Whoa." Yep.
it can be really cheap to be happy if you
Yeah.
compare things
Yeah.
back to,
Yep.
and I don't think we need to live like pilgrims all the time, right? Like I
Sure.
have enjoyed being home and having my cozy office that I'm talking to you from and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I like
I've
YouTube.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
nice things.
Yeah.
I love a really well cooked dinner.
Right. For sure.
I love good food. I love um, you know, I make cocktails in my spare time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love learning about how to make good cocktails and stuff. So,
Yeah.
but so you don't I don't think you have to give that stuff all up all the time, but I think doing something like a Camino every so often to, like, just sort of that
Mhm.
forced lifestyle reset of, like, "Oh, right, I don't need all of those things. I may want them, I may enjoy them, but I don't need them."
There you go, man.
Um,
You've gone down the rabbit hole.
it's powerful. Yeah.
What's next for you?
Um,
Or you don't know yet?
yeah, no, so, like I said, immediately got back and in some ways got back to, like,
Yeah. Go
the
back to work.
culture, the got back to work.
Yeah.
But, I'm hoping to structure work in a way that is, I can carry some of these lessons
Yeah, that's
into
cool.
work. So, I'm working on starting a new startup with a friend, but we're really, really gonna try to bootstrap it if we can and try to focus on my dream has always been to build a lifestyle business where, like, you
Mm.
know, honestly, if I can work as little as possible and
Yeah.
make enough to sustain myself and to live a good life, and then supply that for like 2 or 3 employees and just like create a great culture, a great place where people are trusted and,
Mhm.
there's not this false sense of urgency all the time where you have to rush, rush, rush. And,
Yeah.
you know, so building a company, it's going to be hard. It's going to take some grinding. It's
Yeah.
going to mean trading in some stress and like
Yep.
giving up on some adventures a little bit, but
You've done it
um,
before.
done it before and hoping to do it again in a way that's even more sustainable than the last time,
Yeah.
and can create a really, create more opportunities for more Caminos.
Right.
Um, and then my trade-off for myself was when I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go after this. My trade-off was, all right, I've got to do at least 1 week-long backpacking trip this year,
Cool.
and I've got to go spend at least a week in Mexico.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to do those two things. I've got the first one planned. I'm gonna do a 77-mile hike in South Carolina with my
Okay.
dad.
Cool.
So we're gonna go
It's
through
very
hike
cool.
the Foothills Trail
Ah, yes. I've
up
done
north
some
of
of that.
Greenville. Yeah,
Yes. It's good stuff.
beautiful. We've done sections,
Man.
but have always wanted to through hike it, and so,
Okay.
it's 77 miles, so we're gonna do it in probably about a week. Um,
That's legit.
uh, People
That's
do it
legit.
faster, but we're gonna take our time and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I had the privilege of, I did like a outdoor martial arts thing. We did 7 days out in the woods,
sick.
and, yeah, that was,
Where were you?
oh, we were actually in, it was South Carolina. We were in,
Cool.
the middle of the kinda near Camden area. So
Okay.
it's like kinda sand hilly, kinda foothilly,
Yeah.
but still in the middle of the woods. And the thing that got me the most, and I don't know if you were like this, when you were doing your hiking on the Camino, but, was the like, putting away the phone.
Hmm.
Like,
Tell me
for
about
lo
that.
like, well, we didn't have one for 7 days.
Nice.
And it took me about 3 days before I
Yeah.
stopped checking it. Even though I didn't have it. It was weird. I'd
Yeah.
be like, "Well, it's cold. How cold is it? Let me see." And it's like, why do I need to know the number? Like,
Yeah.
what is that weird need for data or whatever, And it took me 3 days to, like, not be reaching for it.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
just have a conversation and you're like, "Well, what about this thing?" And, "Well, I don't know. Let me look it up." Like, it doesn't exist if you don't have your phone. So,
Yeah.
um,
I think a
it's like,
big part of why I've always loved the outdoors is I've always felt like it's a little bit of a reset for your brain. Like
yeah, oh, man.
it just
You need it at least once a year.
yeah. I didn't give up my phone for the Camino. So the Camino
Well,
goes
you
through such
couldn't. I'm
populated
sure
areas.
I'm sure you had to
Yeah,
have it for.
I was still using it, still had data the whole way, and
Yeah.
I wasn't super strict with myself. I said, "You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna check my fantasy football
Well,
scores.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna,
yeah.
text my girlfriend."
Right.
And I had some friends who tried to like go like again, my friend Kuba, the one who never wanted to spend more than 15 euros a night and never stopped in a town,
Yeah.
never took a rest day. He was a little more hardcore, and so he did no phone, no data.
Oof.
He did no data pretty much the
Oof.
whole way. I think he let himself turn data on like 2 or 3 days out of the Camino.
Yeesh. Yeah.
Um, and although it's funny, we ended up teasing him because he had no data, he would constantly ask us to look things up on our
Yeah,
phones.
right?
And
You're
it's
like,
like
"Dude, you're still doing it, though."
it's like, I don't know if this counts. Like you're not
It counts.
you're just
Yeah.
using my data.
Yeah. Yeah. Using me as the conduit. Yeah, it's not the same thing.
But
But, yeah, man, I think we need
it's
it. We need to reset our brains and our hearts. I mean, it's just
yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to talk to you. What a great thing you did, man. You should
Thanks,
be
man.
proud, and I'm sure it will affect you for the rest of your life. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
for
that's
sure.
incredible. Well, dude, thank you for catching me up on that. I saw
Thank
your
you,
LinkedIn
man.
post and read your post and was like, I want to know more. That's
Dude, it
awesome.
was so good to catch up with you. I
You
just
too, man.
love talking to you, and so I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
reaching out. This
Yeah.
was a good forcing function to catch up and just
Yeah.
get a little deep and talk about
It's
shit.
also that's also why I do this.
Yeah, I know,
It's so
man.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, man, thank you, and we'll catch you soon.
awesome.